Welcome to another edition of Influences Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Harischuk, and I'm here today with Dr. J, aka Dr. Martina Janjua, a qualitative researcher turned DJ and producer, is a rising talent in Toronto's house music scene. She is known for curating deep, soulful, and funky sets, drawing inspiration from the likes of Miguel Miggs, Hatiris, and Saison. Her sound blends warmth and groove, or blues and funk, with undeniable energy. With a background that spans everything from 10 years of classical piano training, early exposure to disco and Motown, and even a love of flamenco, Dr. J brings a rich musicality to the decks. Her adaptability is one of her greatest strengths, reading a crowd and shaping the vibe in real time with seamless transitions and thoughtful selections. Her standout performances include Canada's Walk of Fame induction gala and the Living Lux Awards. And she's played at premier venues across Toronto, including the Four Seasons and the Drake Hotel. Looking ahead, Dr. J is expanding into electronic music production and international gigs with a mission to refine her signature sound and cement her place as a dynamic creative force in the house music world. Dr. J, welcome to Influences Podcast.
Thank you so much, Jason. It's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have you on. I always wanted to name myself or have the ability to name myself Dr. J, but I'm
Really?
so glad. Yeah, yeah, but I don't have the credentials as you do. So so I didn't feel that it was appropriate.
Well, the funny thing is actually there are apparently a lot of DJs called Dr. J, and I was even advised to change my DJ name because of it, but I was like, but that's my actual name.
Well,
So,
that's just it. That's the thing, right? Like, not only that, so I like your name because, you also have a PhD to back yourself up, right? So it's like you have the credentials. I'm not sure if these other Dr. J's do. I don't know the other Dr. J DJs,
yeah.
but which leads to my first question. What is a qualitative researcher?
So, in short, a qualitative researcher is a researcher who studies people and human behavior, basically. So, in contrast to quantitative research, which is studying, like collecting data that's more numerical, doing statistical analyses on numbers and finding out the what, a qualitative researcher will ask questions about the why or the how. And we collect data through observations, interviews, case studies. I think even like immersing yourself within or immerse. It's been a long time since I've done research. But yeah, you immerse yourself in the culture of whatever you're studying. So that's ethnography, coming back from anthropology. So yeah, and then it's about looking to making inferences and contextualizing and understanding things more on an in-depth level that can't be studied with numbers, basically.
So are you like a psychologist then?
No, not a psychologist. I'm an anthropologist. I have a background in anthropology, but also very diverse. So everything I do is very diverse
Yeah.
with, sort of like a limited framework. So, for example, anthropology, I started doing forensic anthropology. And then I got interested in diseases. And so I wanted to study diseases in human remains. So that kind of led me down the path towards more of an archaeological, look at things. And then I did medical anthropology in my master's. And during that, I was looking at population health in antiquity, and I was looking at death records to try and make inferences about the health of a population. And when I finished that, I was like, I really want my research to be applicable to, people who are alive today. And so I went into public health, trying to be more pragmatic about finding a job when I finish. And yeah, I studied tuberculosis among newcomers to Canada. And I was looking at policy and basically how policy and the interaction with medical professionals and medicine overall, how that impacts people's health and specifically newcomers. So there's
Wow.
a mouthful for you.
That's pretty impressive. So, how did this qualitative researcher that I'm talking to here turn into a DJ and producer? Can you take us
Well,
on that journey?
that was a logical next step, obviously.
Oh,
Uh,
well, yeah. What else are you gonna do with that, right?
exactly. I mean, I'm surprised you asked.
Yeah.
Well, so I'm like, how far back do I go? I could talk about this ad nauseum, which would not be necessarily the best thing, but when my older son was 6 years old, this is just pre-pandemic, around the time when I was finishing up my PhD, he wanted to be an actor. And so my husband and I decided that because I'm the more artsy one and he's already, he's the main breadwinner. So we decided that the only way we would allow our child to go into that industry is if I'm there with him 24/7. I manage his career, watch him closely. Basically, I figure out the ins and outs of this new industry that we'll be entering and help guide his career and keep him safe, basically. So I took on that challenge and so that's how we entered the entertainment industry. And so DJing is something that I've actually wanted to do for a very long time before that. And there was a period of time when I was writing my dissertation and I was just like very like intensely like right in it. I would listen to music as I wrote, but I realized that even music without lyrics, I had to basically stop listening to music because it would distract me too much. Because then I would just focus on the music. And then if there's a mix of a song, I would be like, oh, this sounds good, but I would like it better if, we took out these elements and then we added something here. So just naturally, I would gravitate towards, like, that's what my brain would do instead of focusing on writing. So I was like, I have to stop listening to music. So I stopped listening to music for a period of about 8, 9 months. And when I finished my PhD, I basically like turned on my music again, and it was like my soul came back to life. And it wasn't without that, the absence of music that I realized how important music is to me. And at that point, I was already sort of thinking about, I told my husband, I was like, I know I'm finishing my PhD. I'm like, but I really love music. This is something I've wanted to do for almost ever. How do you feel about it? He's like, well, if that's what you want to do. He was very supportive. But then other things happened. And so my older son's entrance into the entertainment industry came about. And so I was focused on that. And he actually at one point started beatboxing. He picked it up really quickly. He was really good at it.
Cool.
And so we tried to get him, exposure and get him busking and, booking him a show, whether it's at the farmer's market or wherever, which, for a child, I think at that point he was maybe like 9 or 10. For a child, you can't just like book a 9, 10-year-old beatboxer for a half-hour gig where like he can't just beatbox for 30 minutes straight. It's almost impossible even for like really well-trained beatboxers. So he needed someone to kind of back him up, and he did a few gigs with one of his coaches. But then that obviously wasn't his coach's main thing to help my son's career. So then I thought, I was like, what can I do to help him out and support him so that he can do his performances? And around that time, one summer, he broke his collarbone, my son. And at the beginning of the summer, he had the entire summer planned of sports because, maybe he wasn't working too much and acting that summer. But he broke his collarbone, and my husband and I were thinking, we're like, what is he going to do for the whole summer? Like, he's already kind of feeling down, etc. And so my husband came across a DJ school, DJ camp for kids. So we signed him up for that. And he learned to DJ. Poor thing, with like one left arm in the sling, he was just like learning to spin with one hand. And so we already had the equipment in our basement, which I never got to because of the pandemic. I thought, oh, great. I know everybody started to sort of pick up on DJing, or a lot of people did at that time. I thought I would have the time to do it too, but as the mother and the infectious disease expert in the house, I was basically too focused on keeping everyone alive before we knew how bad COVID was. So I didn't have the time that theoretically, I thought I would. But at least my son had the mixer. And then when the beatboxing thing started happening and I got that idea, I was like, that's what I can do. I'm like, I've been putting off DJing for so long, partially mother guilt, partially just not being able to find the time. And then this whole new job with managing my son, it just seemed like everything came together. And I'm like, that's it. I'm like, now I actually have a reason that's beyond me to learn DJing. I could help my son. It all just came together. And then I finally learned to DJ. And because it was
That's
something,
awesome.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
something
that's great.
for years, I was like, this is it.
Yeah. So I see that you're also trained in classical piano. How does that help you as a DJ?
I think, not I think, I know that I have an advantage over someone who would just start music or DJing right now, having no background. I started playing piano right when I moved to Canada, which was at 8 years old. And learning the theory, mind you, at the time I didn't understand the value of theory. I was like, why do I have to learn this? I did RCM, right? I went
Yeah.
all the way up to I graduated grade 8 and I started grade 9 piano.
Nice.
Yeah, and so all the theory, I know it's in my head, but I didn't, like I said, I didn't value it at the time. I took it for granted. But I know it's like learning a language. It's like I know this language already. I understand intuitively how music works. I was very fortunate to be born with an inclination for music, right? It's just one of those things. And so I understood music theoretically, even contemporary music, electronic music. I could make sense of it without necessarily it being explicit. So even my very first gig, I was able to mix songs and I think like 98% bang on with my phrasing for a full 3 hour set.
Cool.
Which I think for a beginner is pretty impressive. But again, I don't think I would have been able to do that without my background.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. So it sounds like you put a lot of thought into curating your set. Why do you feel this needs to be done?
I don't know if I feel it needs to be done. I mean, as a DJ, as a selector and an artist, I do consider myself an artist. I could expand on that later, but I think it's important, but I know everybody has their own process. For me, I mean, one of the reasons is because I want to make sure I do a good job. I want to make sure I'm prepared. For a while when I was sort of plagued with this thinking of I'm new, I can't mess up, I can't make a mistake. I just wanted to make sure I have it all kind of laid out in front of me before I go in front of people. That's very important to me, just to feel like I'm prepared. Secondly, it also depends on who you're playing for, who's your audience, because there's a big difference in playing for an event that you're hired for specifically, or if you're doing a set at a club or something more like laid back, where you have more creative and artistic freedom to do whatever you'd like to do with your sets. In any case, there are certain parameters that I feel like as a DJ I have to work with. And so it's making sure that if it's a set that you're curating for an event, make sure you do what is asked of you. You have a job, you have a purpose of being there. So certain songs need to be there. And then for the more creative sets, the really fun ones, the ones that feed my soul personally, I want to make sure that I'm telling a story. I want to make sure that I'm taking the listeners on a journey, that I'm expressing what I feel. So my song selection, when it's for me, for those sets, is based on how it makes me feel, which is the only, I think, area in my life where that really it's a good thing where feelings sort of lead the way in your choices as opposed to other parts of life. You can't always just lead with emotions. Um, but yeah, and I'm sort of I'm testing it out and seeing like how are people responding to it. Obviously, if they're listening, if it's background music, then that's another thing that you're doing, right? But if
Right.
people are responding to it, I find that that's the way you can connect. And if all those things overlap, like I'm enjoying what I'm playing, I'm happy, I'm giving that energy to the crowd, and they're giving that back to me. And it's feedback for me to understand how to do a better set next time and how to be a better performer. So, those are all the reasons why I think it's important to put thought into a set. But again, that's just my process
Yeah, absolutely.
of
So
doing.
in the bio, you mentioned some of your standout performances, Canada's Walk of Fame induction gala and the Living Lux Awards. What made these stand out?
So, the reason why those two stand out, and particularly Canada's Walk of Fame, is not so much establishing me as an artist, because I have other performances that I've done that, again, I may be more proud of in certain ways. But I think it's very important as a newcomer to the scene to establish credibility and legitimacy as a professional, to be taken seriously as a DJ. And having the opportunity to DJ at events that are so high profile, I think really does that. So being able to say, even for DJs or promoters whom I've talked to since doing that gig, as soon as I say I've done that, there's a very clear reaction in terms of, oh wow, that's an accomplishment, that's an achievement. And I think it also goes to show that the people who are hiring me have trust in me that I'm going to do a good job and have certain expectations. And, there's a lot of pressure to perform at your best at events
Absolutely.
like that. So those are the reasons why those stand out.
Okay, and you've also played at some pretty cool venues, the Four Seasons Hotel and the Drake Hotel. How are playing hotel venues different than club venues?
So the hotel venues, the Four Seasons was actually also a private event. So that one falls into the category of private events, right?
Okay.
Uh, Playing at the Drake Hotel, I really, really enjoy that gig. It's at their lounge. It's very chill, very laid back. And in terms of DJing, I find that I have sort of three, I would say maybe moods that
Right.
I love to hang out in. So I have the chill, more like laid back, loungy vibes, right? Then I have sort of like middle ground where you can kind of pick up the tempo, maybe like be sort of an opening act kind of mood. And then I have the more party mood. So being specifically at the Drake Hotel, that one is geared because it's a lounge, it's daytime. That one is geared towards more the loungy part, but again, it's one of the three that I absolutely love, and I have freedom to play whatever I want to play within, those specifications of setting the right mood.
Right.
And yeah, those definitely give me room and space to be creative, test out a new sound that I want to try out, see how people react, but it's not so high pressure that people are listening so intently, right?
Right.
Whereas, a clubbing gig would be more performative and then more eyes are on you and people are there for the music, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned that you're branching out now for international gigs. I just want to know how it's going with getting some of those gigs.
I'm in the beginning stages of, I guess, getting all my sort of administrative things in order. So you need an EPK, you need to have certain things in place before you start reaching out to people internationally, especially if you want to reach out to a booking agent. So I'm working on those. There was a bit of a push for me to try and rush that because I am going on vacation overseas and I would love to find a venue to play without having that administrative aspect ready and sending it to booking agents, it's a little tough and it's taking a lot more work on my end. So I kind of have to hustle, try and make connections. I've been very fortunate that I was connected to a DJ group,
Yeah.
WhatsApp group, by a few headliners at the Ministry of Sound.
Cool.
I've entered into a contest, legitimate contest. I know online you don't always find legitimate things,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but yeah, an actual legitimate contest to do a set at Ministry of Sound. So they haven't chosen the winner yet, but keeping my fingers crossed.
Well, I did everything that I was supposed to do to make
Thank
sure
you.
that
Yeah.
I'm hoping you win that contest.
Oh,
So,
thank you so much. Yeah, thank you
yeah,
for your support. And it's a lot of people actually, surprisingly, I already feel like I have a good group of people who are out there supporting me, and it's been wonderful to see. So,
yeah,
whether I win, that set or not, obviously I would love to.
yeah,
If not, I'll make the best of it either way, and I'm still going to keep trying. And if I
absolutely.
don't get anything on this one, I'm at least now I know going through this process what I need to do, and I'm literally doing the work to get that done. So it's just a matter of time.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've mentioned this in the interview. I didn't see it in the Bible, I was going to say. Uh, in the bio, but you've pretty well established your mom of two boys, you have a husband. So I know that interestingly enough, you kind of answered some of this question already by getting your son into DJing. But what's it like balancing family life and DJ life?
It's hard. I'm not gonna lie, it's hard. Especially I think with someone whose process is like mine, which is in order for me to do, but I think, let me preface what I'm going to say. I think this may be true for most people and most things that people do. In order to truly be successful at something, I think you have to be a little bit obsessive.
Okay.
And I get a little bit obsessive, but I find it's part of being
You're
creative.
very methodical though when you say that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, again, because it's coming back to balance, right?
Absolutely.
So when I'm in a creative flow, it's hard when you stop, you don't know if you're going to get back into it. So it's really about having the support system, which is my husband, who's, like I said, he's been incredibly supportive. And he knows that this is it for me. Like, this is my thing.
Okay.
And so he's willing to do everything he can to, if I need him to pick up the kids from school or camp or something, if he can, based on his work, he'll do it. He's more than happy to. I have my mom involved and my parents involved in helping us look after the kids at times, so that helps. And if I have a gig that I have to prep for, that's a conversation with my husband again. It's like, this is coming up. I'm going to need some extra time. Let's work around it. And then also making sure that I make the time to spend time with my kids and that
Yeah.
they never feel like DJing is more important to me than they are, because it's not.
No.
So when my kids need me, obviously, like I'm there for them first and foremost.
Well, that's great. So you mentioned some pretty good names as your inspirations in your bio. Miguel, Miggs, Saison, and Hatiris.
Yeah.
How have these artists influenced what you do? And are there any others that you'd like to mention?
Yes, there definitely are many others. So my musical influences, if I actually like listed, again, my diverse background, like with education, diverse background with music, I don't think anyone's just like influenced by one or two or three artists. These are just sort of the main ones whose sound influences my sets the most at the moment. Although Miguel Miggs has been, sort of like that. I don't know. I don't want to say beacon for me, but in terms of musicality, the sound, the vibe, the mood, like everything about his music, I just love. And even his remixes on the people he signs to his label, and he puts his own little, like, his salted rub
Yeah.
mix. Like I just love everything he does. So as far as like artists go, so my journey into even understanding myself, what kind of sound do I like? What kind of artist do I like? That journey started in my early 20s, which has been a long time. And I was always trying to find out, I was like, what songs do I like? Because I was exposed to a lot of electronic music and a lot of artists, and back in the rave scene in the early 2000s, that's sort of when everything started for me. And I knew I was listening, I was going to raves, and I was like, I always liked one or two songs more. So for me, what moves me is like I'm always trying to find. I was like, who is it that whose music do I love? Because whenever I listen to an album, there may be like one or two or three songs I like max out of like 12 to 24. And I was like, no, well, like this is a miss, this is a miss. And so it's like I'm picking little bits and pieces from a lot of different artists, but I
Right.
found once I found Miguel Miggs, it's like 80% of his whole album. I'm like, I genuinely love it. And so like even his influences of like blues, I love blues. I
Right.
went through like a small emo, stage in my life where I listened to alternative rock. So I remember I love Bush, right? Like
Oh
from
yeah.
I love them. Oh
Oh
my God.
yeah.
I
Oh
love
yeah.
them.
The
Our Lady
throwback.
Peace. Yeah, so like the guitars and that moody, that kind of like melodic, in the minor keys and that
Yeah.
those are the songs that move me. And I find that Miguel Miggs's music incorporates that, and also there's been a huge influence from like hip hop and R&B for me. Majority of like my high school life, I listened to hip hop and R&B, and even before that,
Right.
before I got into dance music, because I used to hang out with DJs, sort of in like the last couple of years of high school. So yeah, so that's all those influences are there. And I mean, like, oh, and dance hall, like I just love to dance. I love
Yeah.
dancing music.
Yeah.
And so Hatiras and Saison, those artists are sort of what has helped me bridge the gap between kind of like the chill, funky melodic groove of Miguel Miggs more into like the party, my party, Dr.J party vibes.
All right.
Yeah, so it's the higher energy because for me, like even going into like tech house is sort of like that's already like pushing the boundaries for me in
Yeah.
terms of what I love. But I find I guess they're the Jack and House, that's really sort of I'm finding that's kind of my groove. That's the one that marries,
I could see you getting into that already. So yeah, cool. Yeah, so last question. How do you feel that you are an influence on DJing or electronic music in general?
Okay, so on electronic music, it's too early for that. I haven't produced any electronic music yet. I produced a song for and with my son actually, but he likes hip hop, so it's hip hop. But
Oh,
it's
cool. Okay.
yeah, I wrote it and produced it, and he did great with that. So I haven't started producing electronic music yet, so I know like that requires an input and for an audience of, producers and DJs to listen to that in order for that to make a change. However, in terms of DJing, there's the output. I
Yeah.
think that kind of like it completes the cycle. And on that level, I don't know, I guess I'm being a little bit sneaky because when I am being put in front of audiences during events that, it's like here, play the music that, here, like do the top 40 or whatever. I will always try to find a way to sneak in some of like
Your
more of,
stuff.
like the house. Yeah, so even at Canada's Walk of Fame, I snuck in Hatiras.
Oh,
And
nice.
that's totally not the audience for his music. But I mean, it fit the outline of what I was to play, which is Canadian artists mainly, right? Because it's a Canadian event.
I met Hatiras. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, and I reached out to him. I was like, I'm playing this at this event. I'm like, is there any track you have coming out that you want me to play? He's like, whatever fits. He's like, that's cool, right? And so I made sure I snuck it in there so, it actually fit the vibe. There were a couple of other tracks by a few artists, local artists that I wanted to play, but I was like, I can't get away with this one as much as I would love to. But yeah, so I think exposing those audiences to music that they may not have been exposed to otherwise, but doing it in a way, packaging it in a way that fits whatever vibe that they've asked that I curate.
Yeah.
That that's kind of like my sneaky superpower.
Oh, that's great. What a great answer. Well, Dr. J, I love saying that, Dave. Dr. J, thank you so much for joining me on Influences podcast. I wish you the best in your career as a DJ.
Thank you so much.
And yeah, all the best.
Perfect. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be here. Thank you for reaching out and having me on the show.
You're welcome. You have been watching and listening to Influences Podcast. Influences Podcast is written, produced, and hosted by yours truly, Jason Harischuk. Also produced by Angela Churchill, aka Purple Sapphire. My social media consultant is Christina Laukinen, also known as My Girl Tuesday. Check out Influences Podcast on Instagram at influences_podcast. That's influences_podcast. Thanks for watching and listening.